certain that a lot of people are now wondering. So if all that is true, and I know this is like, how is it possible for a human to know this? But what is the nature of God?
That depends on what God you're looking for. The Bible breaks down. I stick to what is in the Bible. So I'm not going off of a Greek-based definition of what God is, which would be theos, what we know as theology. So theos in the Greek means God, which can either reference human beings or it can reference some kind of thing beyond human beings. And in a sense, ology is simply another Greek word meaning branch or science of. So theology, in a sense, is the branch or science of God. And God, in a sense, is in that aspect like Zeus or like Hercules. But in the Bible, that's not how God is defined. In
Right.
the Bible defines the word God in and of itself by doctrine. In John 1:1, in the beginning was the word was God, and it just goes on. Speech is God. Words are God to the Bible in the language, if we're going to translate it from the English into the Hebrew or English into the Greek. Wisdom is God in the Bible. And there's two wisdoms. The first wisdom is a religious philosophy that's based off of rites, traditions, and commandments and deeds. The second God or the second wisdom or philosophy is internalizing words, learning the fact of those words, and cultivating them to then become that wisdom that you're cultivating, to act out not by a creed but by conscience. So
Wow.
that's in the Bible, strictly to the Bible, that's what the nature of God is. Everything else that we know about God from religion, it comes from Babylonian and Egyptian times.
So I think one of the things that turns people away from any kind of faith in or any kind of spirituality is the idea that God created man in his image, and so they think of God as a grandfather with a white beard up in the clouds and that kind of image. And I think when people start to think of that, they start to think that's a childhood fairy tale, and so it's all a bunch of junk and it's all a bunch of silliness, and anybody who believes in it is stupid. So what would you say to the people who have that issue?
I would say that if you're going to look at it from a surface level, yes, you should not pay any attention to that. But the Bible is written in a way where language and context matters. And when you're hearing about God's image, the next question is, what is God's image? And
Right.
the portrayal of what God's image is, it's given to us from that very first verse in Genesis up until that point. And from the first verse up until that point, there's no mention of any kind of human form or figure. So to link the image of God as a sort of human form or figure, or to say that human beings are created in the image of God, is a false context. The image of God is not a literal image. If you go looking again at the original language, image doesn't mean mirror in the natural sense. Image, in a sense, means it does mean mirror and it does mean copy, but since we're not getting a literal, factual, physical frame, it then changes to what is that mirror? And if you go back into to look at the sequence of events, how it says God said and it was, God said and it was, God said and it was. And then you get to the point where you say, well, let us, plural, let us make man in our own image. And then you have an actor and then you have a creator. There's two figures there, an actor and a creator. God said, and then the actor made it happen. There's two figures there. So that image breaks down into not something physical, but something philosophical. The image isn't physical. So
Wow.
the image is philosophical. To be created in the image of God is to have a likeness to what we're seeing about how creation occurred. And creation occurred through a speech and a dictated speech and a speech through routine. So to be created in the image of God is to be created in a form where you believe that in order to have any sort of obedience or any sort of love or any sort of pride or any sort of patience or any sort of devotion, that you have to then say something and for that other hearing individual to believe it. So in a sense, the image of God is a concept. It's a concept where if I say this, you have to do it in order to be considered a creation. And that concept is religion. The
Holy
image
moly.
the image of God, and that's just the first book of Genesis, because there's two images that are there. The
Right.
first image is the philosophy or the concept of religion, but in the second chapter, we're told of a living soul happening. This living soul never took place in the first book of Genesis.
Hmm.
That living soul being breathed into, it's the second concept of what the image of God is. The image isn't literal, the image is philosophical.
Gotcha. So, but